What occurs when the largest global superpower unexpectedly contacts a young African leader who has made it explicitly known that he is no longer interested in Western interference? Is this a gesture of peace or a deliberate strategic move? What are the intentions of former President Donald Trump? And how will Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the 37-year-old revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, react? Just weeks earlier, a significant event unfolded in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou. However, it failed to capture international attention. On May 27th, Will Stevens, the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for West Africa, arrived on a discreet yet pivotal mission to repair Washington's strained ties with Traoré's administration. This was no ordinary diplomatic visit. It followed closely after Traoré's prominent appearance in Moscow, where he stood beside Vladimir Putin during Russia's Victory Day parade on May 10th, an act full of symbolic weight. Picture it. A young African leader acknowledging Russian military strength while accepting assistance in agriculture and security. That alignment was not accidental. Before diving further, welcome to The New Tourist, your hub for everything African politics, culture, history, and shifting global dynamics. Be sure to subscribe and activate the bell icon so you never miss an update from the continent. If you're enjoying the content, hit the like button to help the channel grow. Now, back to Will Stevens. He is far from an average envoy. Since being sworn in during January 2025, Stevens has stood out as a key figure. He previously earned the Edward R. Murrow Award for challenging Russian misinformation during the 2014 Ukraine conflict. He also served as Consul General in Lagos and holds strong connections across Africa. To be clear, Trump didn't just send anyone, he dispatched an expert, someone who grasps the continent's changing alliances and understands how to respond to Russia's expanding footprint. When Stevens landed in Ouagadougou, he was greeted by Burkina Faso's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Cooperation, Karamoko Jean-Marie Traoré. What unfolds next is under close observation. Although the meeting appeared formal, the atmosphere was unexpectedly cordial, a stark contrast to the heated exchanges that have recently shaped U.S.-Burkina Faso relations. When Stevens spoke, it wasn't mere diplomatic posturing. He delivered a direct message from Donald Trump. America was prepared for a fresh start, a renewed partnership based on mutual respect and national sovereignty. Coming from Washington, this represented a remarkable shift in tone. So, what prompted this change in diplomatic strategy? Why did it require a special envoy to attempt reconciliation when relations seemed beyond repair weeks earlier? The roots go back to early April 2025. During a tense hearing of the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee, General Michael Langley, commander of U.S. Africa Command, made a controversial statement. He alleged that Burkina Faso was mismanaging its gold resources and claimed that the proceeds were being used to sustain Traoré's military regime rather than benefit the public. His remarks, unscripted and politically charged, caused a significant reaction in Ouagadougou. Chairman, Burkina, their gold reserves, that's it. All those proceeds are just being used to protect the junta regime. The backlash was immediate and intense. Demonstrations erupted across Africa, the Caribbean, and among U.S. diaspora communities in Jamaica, Trinidad, and Harlem in defense of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. To them, Langley's remarks were more than offensive. They embodied the very Western intrusion and dismissal of African sovereignty that they oppose. Attempting damage control, Langley clarified in interviews that he was merely raising security concerns, but the harm had already been done. Then came a surprising turn. Rather than let hostilities escalate, Donald Trump intervened by sending Will Stevens to Burkina Faso, widely seen as an effort to repair the damage. The message, Langley's comments, did not represent the broader U.S. position. The visit symbolized Washington's desire to reset relations. But why would Trump, of all people, extend goodwill to a nation led by a man who openly aligns with Russia and criticizes Western imperialism? And why would Traoré, famous for expelling France and rejecting Western influence, even agree to a dialogue? To grasp the implications, one must understand what Ibrahim Traoré signifies. Since taking control in September 2022, following his leadership of the country's second coup that year, he has challenged conventional political norms. At just 37, he holds the title of Africa's youngest head of state. A former geology student who transformed into a hardened army captain, Ibrahim Traoré earned his reputation on the battlefield fighting jihadist forces in Burkina Faso's turbulent northern region. But once in power, Traoré didn't merely pledge transformation, he acted on it. He laid out a bold nationalist agenda that placed African sovereignty at the forefront. In January 2023, he expelled the French ambassador. Just a month later, he ordered all French military forces to leave the country, terminating a long-standing security alliance that many locals viewed as a form of neocolonialism. Traoré wasn't just changing the leadership, he was rewriting the narrative entirely. His audacious decisions didn't only shake Burkina Faso, they sparked a regional ripple effect. Neighboring nations like Mali, Chad, Senegal, Niger, and Ivory Coast began following his lead, expelling French forces and reclaiming control over their own defense strategies. But Traoré's momentum didn't end there. In 2024, he took direct aim at Western economic dominance by nationalizing two large-scale gold mines previously owned by foreign corporations. The price tag: merely $80 million for assets estimated to be worth over $300 million. It was a daring move that sent a clear and unapologetic signal. Africa's resources should benefit Africans. He also took a firm stance against the CFA franc, labeling it a form of modern-day slavery, and announced plans to introduce a new national currency. Alongside Mali and Niger, Burkina Faso withdrew from ECOWAS, a regional bloc seen as pro-Western, and co-founded the Alliance of Sahel States, a new coalition formed around a single goal: building an Africa free from foreign domination. As his administration distanced itself from Western influence, Traoré moved closer to Russia. In 2024, he welcomed Russian advisors and secured 25,000 tons of wheat as aid. By May 2025, he was shaking hands with Vladimir Putin in Moscow, sealing deeper cooperation, further food support, and long-term security guarantees. To many young Africans, Traoré has become more than just a political leader. He represents something larger, symbol of resistance, a modern-day Sankara, a bold voice rising against historical oppressors. Despite persistent threats from extremist groups across Burkina Faso, his popularity continues to rise, which raises the fundamental question: why would Donald Trump, who champions an America First doctrine, reach out to a man aligned with Russia and openly critical of Western institutions? And from Traoré's perspective, what does he stand to gain? Why entertain a conversation with the United States at all? If this dive into African geopolitics resonates with you, consider liking the video and sharing it with someone who values fearless, global storytelling. It helps amplify the narratives that matter. Now, back to the diplomatic exchange capturing worldwide attention. When Will Stevens met Burkina Faso's Foreign Minister Karamoko Jean-Marie Traoré, the tone was unusually direct. Stevens was candid. America wanted to establish a realistic, future-focused relationship, grounded in mutual respect and sovereignty. Their conversation touched on trade, security, and rebuilding trust. But one major issue loomed large: the arms embargo. Burkina Faso has repeatedly accused the United States of blocking weapons deals, not only through direct bans but by discouraging other countries from selling arms as well. In a recent interview from Moscow, President Traoré spoke plainly: besides Russia and China, no one else will sell to us. Worse, some are willing but America says no. It's a glaring contradiction. The West demands that the Sahel fight terrorism, yet denies the tools required to wage that fight. This was the paradox that Stevens was tasked with addressing. It's the tension now defining US Burkina Faso relations. But Stevens didn't come to Ouagadougou empty-handed or offering vague platitudes. According to reports, he made a personal commitment to tackle one of the most sensitive topics in the bilateral relationship: the weapons ban. He promised to work alongside the Burkina government to rebuild trust and pursue a partnership founded on dignity and mutual understanding. When journalists brought up General Langley's controversial remarks, Stevens steered clear of the controversy. He stayed on message. "I come today with a positive message," he said. "We're here to build trust, find common ground, and work together on security, economic development, and humanitarian goals." On the Burkina side, Foreign Minister Karamoko Jean-Marie Traoré didn't mince words. He welcomed Trump's choice to send a high-level envoy and reiterated what Burkina Faso has always demanded: a relationship based on equality, not condescension. As Burkina and as Africans, we seek mutual respect. Africa is a continent, like any other, and Africans are human beings like everyone else. We want a shift in how we're perceived and addressed. This dialogue revealed a deeper truth. Beyond ideology and historical wounds, diplomacy remains possible. Still, hard questions remain. What's fueling this newfound friendliness? What are the real stakes? Let's unpack it. For the US, three key motivations stand out. First, the Russia factor. Burkina Faso's strengthening relationship with Moscow is a red flag for Washington. Just weeks before Stevens' arrival, Traoré was seen on stage with Vladimir Putin, securing promises of military support, food aid, and long-term alliances. From Trump's vantage point, re-engaging with Burkina Faso may be less about goodwill and more about preventing Russia from tightening its grip on Africa. Second, even General Langley called the Sahel the epicenter of terrorism on the continent. The US may not align with Traoré's politics, but they share a common enemy. Jihadist factions aligned with ISIS and Al-Qaeda have seized control over large swaths of territory. Cooperation, even if uneasy, may now be essential for both Burkina Faso and the United States. Third, there's the gold rush. Here's the economic reality. Burkina Faso ranks as the world's 13th largest gold producer. That's approximately 100 tons annually, translating to nearly $6 billion. With Traoré nationalizing foreign-owned assets and championing African ownership over natural resources, US mining corporations risk being shut out entirely. That alone gives Washington ample motivation to reopen dialogue. From Traoré's standpoint, the US initiative has value too. First, It's about balancing global power. While he's moved closer to Moscow, Traoré isn't seeking to swap one dominant power for another. Keeping communications open with the United States allows strategic flexibility. It prevents total dependence on Russia and lets Burkina Faso leverage global superpowers against each other for its own national gain. Second, the security reality. Regardless of his political stance, Traoré is facing a real growing insurgency. His military urgently needs resources, intelligence, and equipment. If the United States is ready to assist or at least stop obstructing it, it's worth having the conversation. Burkina Faso's civilian auxiliary, the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, now numbers around 90,000. Yet even with that strength, the jihadist threat continues to expand. This is why access to American intelligence and high-grade military hardware could become a game-changer. And while President Ibrahim Traoré has cultivated an image as a staunch anti-imperialist, he's also grounded in reality. He understands that severing ties with the West altogether isn't just impractical, it's risky. Instead, he's charting a middle course engagement, but on Burkina Faso's terms. Sovereignty remains non-negotiable, but cooperation is still possible if it's built on mutual respect. What we're seeing unfold goes far beyond bilateral diplomacy. It's a glimpse into the evolving mechanics of global power underneath the polished speeches and political rhetoric. What truly drives outcomes today is strategy, not ideology. Both Donald Trump and Ibrahim Traoré seem to grasp this well. Like it or not, a limited relationship, even if fragile, makes more sense than a complete rupture. But the implications of this diplomatic outreach stretch far beyond Washington and Ouagadougou. Consider what this truly signifies. First, it could signal a transformation in how the United States approaches Africa, particularly under Trump. The shift is away from preaching ideology toward brokering practical deals securely, access to resources, mutual acknowledgement. Second, it disrupts the simplistic Cold War narrative. This isn't a binary East versus West conflict. Traoré's willingness to engage with both Moscow and Washington illustrates that Africa's modern leaders are no longer choosing sides, they're choosing strategies. Third, it reflects a rising assertiveness among Africa's newer generation of leaders. These aren't figureheads or passive participants. They are actively re-engineering their country's relationships with both former colonial powers and current global players. Whether admired or criticized, Traoré demanding a seat at both the American and Russian tables at just 37 years old is undeniably significant. Fourth, this situation adds pressure to regional dynamics. Will the US attempt to coax Burkina Faso back into a chaos, or will it come to terms with the emergence of the Alliance of Sahel states and learn to engage with it? Fifth, Traoré's push for resource nationalism, especially over gold, has evolved into a key source of leverage. By reclaiming foreign-operated mines and redirecting the profits into national development, he's boosted his domestic popularity and strengthened his position in global negotiations. As we come to a close, if you found value in this in-depth look and want to keep exploring underreported African narratives, tap the like button and share the video. It helps us expand our reach and keep delivering stories that challenge conventional wisdom. This diplomatic initiative from Trump to Traoré isn't just about politics. It marks a turning point, proof that ideology now often takes a back seat to interests, and that even the most unlikely of alliances can form when global stakes rise high enough. Burkina Faso's story is still unfolding, with jihadist forces expanding their hold over regions of the country in international scrutiny. Mounting Traoré faces his most significant test yet, but one fact stands tall: the young captain from Ouagadougou is no longer playing by the old rulebook, and neither is the shifting world around him. Despite its immense gold wealth, Burkina Faso's development is still being stifled by persistent conflict. Traoré's bold vision, rooted in sovereignty and Pan-African solidarity, is now confronting the harsh limits imposed by reality on the ground. For the United States, this re-engagement with Burkina Faso underscores how difficult it's become to sustain global influence in an increasingly multipolar world. The outdated model where African nations were boxed into pro-West or pro-East alignments is crumbling. A more adaptive approach is emerging, one that still protects US interests but finally acknowledges something long overdue: respect. And this story, it's far from finished. What we're witnessing is just one calculated move in a far larger, increasingly complex game of geopolitical chess, one that's playing out with new urgency all across the African continent. The big questions, they still remain. Can Traoré continue to walk the razor's edge between Washington and Moscow? Will Trump's direct, transactional diplomacy actually translate into meaningful cooperation on security and trade? And could this moment signal a deeper shift in how Western powers engage with a newly assertive Burkina Faso? We don't have all the answers yet. But one thing is clear: Ibrahim Traoré has pulled off what many once deemed impossible. He's compelled the world's most powerful nation to stop, take notice, and engage with his country on equal terms. For one of the poorest nations on earth, that in itself is a historic achievement. As developments unfold across West Africa, we'll be right here bringing you sharp insights, critical context, and bold analysis. So stay tuned. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with anyone who wants a deeper, unfiltered look into Africa's rising influence on the global stage. This is The New Tourist, and we're just getting started.